Welcome to Coming Home, helping you survive and thrive in your homeschooling. This week we are starting a question and answer session. Now, question and answer sessions are really helpful because usually the homeschool parents asking the questions are asking something that's pertinent to where they're at and what's on their mind, and generally there are a lot of other homeschooling parents who are asking the same kind of questions. So let's jump in and get to the first one. Hi Christine, I have just subscribed to your channel. Thank you. Haven't had a chance to watch, so forgive me if this is already covered. Transitioning from regular state school to unschooling and getting used to mixed age learning. My daughter is 12 and we've just applied. Her biggest challenge will be making new friends and dropping the expectation that they all need to be the same age. Indeed, there are a few topics in here. It's completely different, schooling and homeschooling. So the most important time is that key word that you actually used in here, transition. Transition is a period of time and it's different for everybody. It's not instant. So give yourself that time. That's the first thing. When you're in school, and if you stop to think about it, this is what it was like for us too. We just didn't really realize it. Everything in school is fully directed. Even the so-called free play or pick any topic you like and write about it is actually fully directed. Now, homeschooling is less directed and unschooling even more so. Now, your child is not used to this and they will need to learn how to take the initiative in things, and this will actually take time too. It is exactly the same as an unused muscle. So if you think of those times when you went for a run and you hadn't for a long time, or you went to the gym and you had a new exercise assigned to you, that kind of example, and suddenly you realized you had a muscle somewhere that you kind of forgot that you did because it hurts. So that muscle needs to be built. Now, if you bear that principle in mind, that's what your child, and you actually, but that's what your child and children now need to learn. There's going to be more self-led. They're not going to be waiting for mum, the teacher, to tell them everything that they are going to do. So I think that's an important thing to realize. Once this unused muscle starts to build, and again, think of that picture, if you like, of you're working on a particular set of muscles at the gym, let's say, and all of a sudden you can start to see them building, refining, firming up. That will happen too. It leads to innovation, self-starting skills, and independent learning. Now, if you think about that for a minute, they are highly valuable skills and life skills to have, because not only does this apply while you're in an educational setting, but when you actually go out into the more adult world or the tertiary education world, or starting your own business, running a home, anything that you need to get on in life, you're going to need to know, how do you innovate? How do you self-start and have that inner core of self-discipline where you just get on with something in spite of how you feel, and independent learning? So here's a little example for you. Some years back, I was talking with a friend and they had an admin job in one of our local independent Christian schools, and they weren't really quite on board with our homeschooling and stuff. But anyway, I was asking her one day what the students who were coming in to school from homeschooling into a high school scenario, so that would be anything from about age 13 right through to 17, that's what it is in New Zealand. What had they noticed was the difference between long-term homeschooling kids and the forever schooled kids. She said there were two things that they noticed, they being her and the staff, and they obviously would talk about this in the staff room. The students didn't particularly form like close relationships with their teachers. And I can remember as she told me that, yeah, so what's wrong with that? You figure that one out for yourself. And the second thing that she noticed was they asked for help very quickly and they expected to get it very quickly. And again, I thought, yeah, well, that's what you're used to at home. If you don't know what to do, rather than kind of pretend, because you might get laughed at in a classroom if you ask for help, and I can remember that in my school years, was that they would go and ask, and then they expected it quickly. Okay, so that is probably a character fault that now the student, because they're in a room full of other students who also need attention, will learn, and quickly, that there are other people in the room too, and things must be done in an orderly, timely way, and they might not get attention bang like that, just like you do at home. I actually found that interesting, in that that was the only two issues that she came up with that were the differences between long-term homeschool children going into a school setting. I thought, well, we've done pretty well. That's not so bad. The other, on the positive side, if you like, of a child, or now an older student, going into a tertiary situation, was that over and over again, what the universities or the technical institutes were finding was the homeschooled students knew how to work by themselves. They knew how to self-start and innovate. There's that word again. And there is the result of implementing practices over a long period of time, ending up with a skill that they are now familiar with, and it's just second nature to them. They don't actually need the lecturer or the professor to tell them what to do. They know how to go to the library and access the resources. They know what to do to organize their project work. So back to your question, getting used to mixed-aged learning. Use the same educational experiences, such as you go out to a park, you attend a drama or a concert, you listen to a guest speaker, and according to their age and ability, they're all experiencing the same event, but they will be able to write or draw or tell about it in an age-appropriate way. So you don't have to organize a particularly different schedule or event just because somebody is in a different year group at school. Work smarter, not harder. I think that comes under that heading. Now, a friend way back in our homeschooling days, she consistently did unit studies for her family, which simply put is she would choose a topic, let's say for a term, a school term, which is about 10, 12 weeks. She would choose, for instance, ancient Egypt, and that would be the topic for the entire term, and she would base all the curriculum around that, and she would plan according to age which book each child was going to be using, the projects that they would do accordingly for it, and it was just called unit studies. And I can remember she was telling me about it, and I just decided that that actually sounded like too much hard work for me, and that wasn't for me. But to her credit, she did that right through their homeschooling years, and like us, they were long-term homeschoolers. So I've put a little asterisk next to that, because I'm going to look Lynn up, and I'm going to ask if I can interview her, because there's nobody quite like somebody who's been immersed in a particular way of doing something for ages as the expert that we need to listen to. So I'll go and look Lynn up, and we'll do something on unit studies. Have the same read aloud book. I've mentioned before that every day it was like sacred time for us, and part of our little routine. At 11:30 we would stop what we were doing, the kids would all come out, and in the lounge we'd sit down and we would read the current read aloud book that we had. It was always chosen as a really well written, because remember, we did the Charlotte Mason approach, which means that you are concentrating on whole learning books that have been written at an earlier time, and they are stretching your students right out to their knowledge boundaries, their words, their phrases, historical facts. It's enjoyable, but it's educational too. Use the same read aloud book no matter how old your range of children are. How that works from a practical point of view is that if there is a big age gap, you've got maybe a toddler, preschoolers, school age one, and maybe even say like a little bit older, even if a child doesn't understand everything you're reading, a lot is absorbed just through the process of osmosis it's actually like. So it looks like they're not actually taking everything in. You know they're not taking everything in because you know the book is way above their head. But even a young child can absorb a lot through just context. You will be continually surprised at what a young child learns. So you read this book that kind of caters to everyone. The young ones can sit around quietly and they can listen, and so long as they could play quietly with their Lego, they were allowed to play with their Lego. They weren't allowed to talk. They can do a puzzle, they can draw, and it just keeps one half of their brain occupied while they're busy practicing the art of sitting still and considerately and listening at the same time. It actually works really, really well. And then you have the beauty too of it's a steady routine. The children come to expect that this is what happens every day in our house. In our house it was 11:30. It just brings a sense of stability to the family, to the children, to you. Animals are exactly the same. If you've ever trained a dog, when they know the rules and the boundaries, they are so much happier. You can read child psychology books about that. I don't need to go into that right now. When it comes to actually the literature they're reading by themselves or what you're reading to them on a one-to-one basis, of course you're going to assign their literature according to their age and capabilities, always bearing in mind what their boundaries are, and you're choosing a book that's going to gently stretch their capabilities every time. If there are more than 4 or 5 words on a page that your child doesn't know, that book is too hard for them. Put it away, get it out again a little bit later when their whole vocabulary has broadened. And then if you have got good reading lists so that when it's time to choose books, you're not just grabbing it, oh, that'll do kind of thing, that you're strategically, with purpose, choosing books off book lists. I am going to do a podcast that deals with this really carefully because this for us was the whole foundation of how we did our schoolwork over the years, choosing a foundation of what I can really only call very good books and using that to build, because you've got your foundation in and you build on that foundation. As a very, very quick example, the difference between literature and a book, compare it to food. Every time a food goes through a processing, it loses some nutrition in it. So whether it's been dried, rolled, I don't know what they do with the things, but by the time you get to the end of a cornflake, we'll say, there's not as much nutrition in that cornflake as what there is in the original piece of corn. But the nutrition value in porridge, because it is closer to its original source, is far greater than the cornflake, which has gone through several cycles. So use that metaphor, if you like, and now apply that to books. You need to know what to look for. So let's just take an easy example of a modern day popular book. It's not a classic because it doesn't fall under what constitutes classical literature. We'll go for the Harry Potter series. Enormously popular. And then choose another popular classic child's book. Let's go for A.A. Milne or Kenneth Grahame, who wrote The Wind in the Willows. And there is a really good reason why these books stay popular over the decades. They are children's books, but the depth that the author writes in, the phrasing, the wording, just cannot be compared to an extremely popular series like the Harry Potter. I think J.K. Rowling is an amazing person, and what she has done with that series is she's an icon with what she has done. But the reason why that series does not fall under classical literature is that as a piece of work, they're not broadening the child's educational experience of knowledge of what they need to know to live in life. I mean, you could go in and draw out character lessons and things if you like, I'm sure you can. But how does it develop your child's lexicon, for instance? Grammar, punctuation, expression, the challenging of new ideas, using complicated phrasing and ideas to the child. They're free to read that after their school books, which was how it worked for our kids. They had their classical books that they had to go through, because as the homeschooling parent, you know that the content of those books is actually going to feed into your child's mind and heart, and it's equipping them for life, which is why you are homeschooling. You don't give your child something just because it's popular and that's what they want to read. You don't let them stay up as long as they like just because that's what they want. They're children. You are the adult. You do actually know what's best for them. That's why you're doing this whole homeschool gig. That's why you've taken them out of the school system and taken this huge project on for yourself, is because you have got your child's best and deepest interests at heart. And that is how you learn to choose what kind of books and activities they're going to do, because they can't do everything. They can't read everything. There's just simply too much to do, and you need a way to figure out how to make those decisions. The older child can read to a younger child whilst you attend to the baby. As you get used to homeschooling more and more, you're going to see less and less of a divide between school life, other life. Everything starts to become about adding to the value of what it is to live with your child and their education. This is a great learning experience for the older children too, to spend time with a younger sibling, which if you think about it is not an encouraged thing in the normal other way of doing life. They separate off their ages and they do not encourage them to be together. Having your older children sit down with a younger sibling and reading to them helps with not only a sibling relationship, which is potentially one of the most powerful things to come out of this homeschooling journey that you're going to do, but they are learning how to read aloud, which is very different from reading silently. They're going to learn expression, how to read slightly ahead, pronunciation. You won't actually realize that a child doesn't realize how to say something until you actually hear them say it out loud. When I was very young, I read the word island. And it wasn't until I was reading something aloud to my parents, or I heard my parents say something and I queried what the word was. And all that time, island, it was island. And there have been other examples of this with me and my children, where suddenly you say something out loud and you realize, oh, that's not actually how you say it. And so that becomes an educational thing in itself. It teaches them how to work with younger children, and vice versa, that the younger children are learning to work with the older children. If you think about it, segregating by age is a totally unnatural thing, and never at any stage in life again, once a child leaves school, do you ever do this again. The other positive thing about having an older child read to a younger child is that it's using your time wisely. You've got the same amount of time available to you, and learning to compound that time and have some layered things going on at different times of the day can be a skill that you actually learn, and it becomes a useful thing to do. And I should say too that getting a younger child to read out loud to an older child, especially if the younger child is in their very much learning to read stage. So a little caveat here, make sure you have taught and coached your older child to how to gently listen to the younger child, to not criticize them or to be overly hard on them, or to even take the opportunity, as children can do, to be a bit smart or to boast about how good they are and how silly and the younger child is. That is also an important learning thing in itself as well. Now, this question is concerned about the biggest thing for her child leaving school and starting to homeschool is going to be making friends. I totally get that as a concern, but you know what? With everything I saw with kids that had left school recently and they came to join our homeschooling circle was the readiness and openness of the homeschool kids to welcome these new ones in and make them feel a part of it. And your job as a parent too is to just help coach your children to be more aware of what other people are doing and feeling, and their fear of coming into something new, their worry about how they're going to be rejected. More than any other time in your homeschooling years that you're going to have, teaching your children these really important character traits are so important. How many times have we seen adults just behaving in the same way. Oh gosh, the stories I could tell you, and you'll have them too. How hard it is to break in the closed little cliquey groups that they have. Your opportunity is to help your children learn these character skills as they're growing up, so that when they get into adulthood, there are going to be more and more of these precious few adults who know how to welcome in. It is one of the most important gifts you can give to mankind. Quick word about the difference between character and personality. A child is born with a personality. If you come from a family with more than one child, you will know this. If you have more than one child, you will also know this. Children are born with different personalities. They cannot be changed. That is what you have got. Work with it. Character, however, is built, and that is your privilege and responsibility as a parent. Build the character in your child right from the time they arrive as a beautiful little red-faced screaming baby, so that as they're heading on out into their teen years and becoming independent young adults, they have a character that you can look at and you can be so proud and relieved that they are now taking out into the big wide world, which is what you're doing this for, and they're going to be such a blessing to the world outside of them. They're going to be easy to be around, they're going to be reliable, they're going to be successful business owners and employees because their character has been built. So don't be too concerned, dear question asker, about making friends. It will actually happen, and that too will take a little bit of time. So the thing that you can do, rather than waiting and expecting people to come to you and do it all, get out there and go to the field trips that your homeschooling group organises. Art classes, drama classes, things like that. Take advantage of these things. Go to them, and they will find other homeschool children that have shared interests with them. And you can be socialising outside of these activities as well. And as time goes by, friendships will develop. Just going back over the years now of all of the friends my children made, most of them, they drop away as the years go by, as adult friends do too. I mean, how many school friends do you actually keep in contact with, or youth group friends, compared to how many you had at the time and you thought you were going to be best friends forever? Hey, reality isn't like that. But each of our kids, in varying ways, have contacts with homeschooling students, friends that they hung out with over those years, and there is a couple of our kids, more so than the others, that do specifically, even into their 20s, still regularly meet up and have got deep friendships with these homeschool colleagues that they grew up with, really. But that's not a given either, because even as homeschool mums, a lot of them are what I would call incidental friendships. And they were great. They served the purpose while they were there, and they were good friends. But as time goes by, you stop your homeschooling. I probably see regularly now only 2 homeschool mums out of all those friends that we had over the years. So that gives you an idea too. On to the next one. Not so much a question, but this lovely comment that came back on a homeschool thread I am on. Thank you for putting out the podcast, Christine, and thank you to your sons for encouraging you. She's obviously listened to that first one. I'm leaning towards an unschooling approach with an infusion of Steiner and plenty of outdoor bush garden, beach, etc. But your self-care episode and gentle tone was so nourishing to hear that you almost had me in tears. Oh, that's so lovely. You obviously have valuable experience and wisdom. Please continue. Oh, that's so sweet. Well, yes, I do. Without kind of tooting my horn and flicking all the bells and whistles and things, yeah, I have to say I do, and that's why I'm doing this. What I have is now my responsibility to make sure I at least make available to you all the experience that we had over 20 years of active homeschooling, so that you can take what you get from this and just be helped out somewhat. So I just wanted to pick up in something here about the self-care. She mentioned the self-care. Oh my gosh, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of self-care. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. If you don't exercise self-care, you are going to fall apart, and worst case scenario, your dreams of homeschooling your children will collapse. It's up to you to be sure you have got plans in place to minimize and mitigate the inevitable stresses in your chosen lifestyle. And they are inevitable. You can't do life without running into everyday stresses. And when you've got your children at home with you all day, they're little humans just like you. And you know what you're like. You have off days. You can be contrary. You can be moody and emotional and you don't know the heck why. You can have good days and bad days. Well, hey, guess what? Kids are like that too. They're just smaller versions of it. Expect this kind of thing to happen. They are just everyday stresses. A fence at the top of the cliff, your cliff of life, is always better than the ambulance waiting at the bottom for the inevitable pickup. You're going to have to trust me on this one, homeschool parents, probably homeschooling mums. Work on your self-care. It is the most important thing before even teaching your children to read and write, because if you are not self-caring, it's going to affect everything else you do. I'm not quite at the schooling age yet. My boys are 3 and 1.5, but I would love to hear about home from a homeschooling mum's point of view, how to get the kids involved and how you manage things like cooking, chores, organisation, any tricks of the trade I will find motivating. Do you know what, ladies, mostly mums and dads, you're out there too, you've done this. If you have potty trained your child, you can teach them anything. You have already started your homeschooling. It's a mindset. You're getting down there on the floor with them when they're learning to crawl, and you're encouraging them of what to do. You're pointing out colours to them. You are teaching them all the time. Homeschooling doesn't start when your child turns 5. Now, how to get the kids involved and how to manage things like cooking. Okay, yeah, really, really important. You can't let the house fall apart. That is not going to happen. I used to tell our kids, it's our home, and we look after it together. Teaching your children household skills is going to set your kids up for life. They need to learn how and when to clean, tidy, how to change a bed, how to wash their clothes, what ones to separate off and put on delicates and what to wash by hand, how to hang them out and how to fold clothes and put them away. They need to learn how to cook and plan and shop. You're still going to be the CEO of it all, but you're doing your children a huge favour by ensuring that they know how to run a home and how to handle money. One of my sons brought a study to us recently, and it really took me by surprise. It said that children that have grown up learning how to do housework and chores, something like that, ended up to be more successful adults in life. And I thought, oh, really? Well, that was a bonus I wasn't actually expecting. We just taught our kids how to look after things in a house and how to run things because that was just a good idea. But that there had been a study showing that adults who had learnt these responsibilities as children were showing more success in their adult endeavours just kind of surprised me. So I'm going to go and find that study again and unpack that a little bit, because that becomes part of your motivation as to how to work through that time and just keep on keeping on. Now, there is a site called flylady.net, which was a huge help to me and continues to be in just generally the way I run my life. She breaks up people into 2 groups. You're either a born organised, and I am not, or you're the opposite. You're kind of like free and easy, not particularly organised. That's me. So she taught me how to organise myself. Everything I know about organisation now, I owe to the Fly Lady. Thank you, dear lady. You are amazing. Even people who are like born organised that I knew found her so helpful to tweak and add to how they actually organise life. She breaks down your planning of your day, gives you a whole blimmin' list actually as to anything that could possibly be done in a room to clean. It's there. You just have to choose off what you're going to do for the day. I didn't have to think about it. It was great. So you're going to have to plan which day of your week is for doing the weekly jobs. And for us, that was like vacuuming, washing the hard floors, clean the bathroom, empty the rubbish bins, change their beds, that kind of thing. They're the weekly jobs and what gets done and who does it on that day. Then there are the daily jobs that you all have to do. And we rotated those each week so that each child got to have an experience and a time. And nobody ended up with cleaning the toilet just simply because they were the youngest child or the oldest child said, oh, I'm not doing that. We had a rotating thing each week of our daily jobs, and one of them was like clearing off the table for getting the dishes done and just kind of helping to tidy up the lounge, that kind of thing. There were daily jobs that just keep your house from just falling into too much chaos. And because that we had 5 children, when we did the washing, it was divided up, or the laundry you might call it. It was divided up with each child. They got their washing done twice a week. They had their assigned day, and that's when they brought their laundry to the washing area. You didn't go and get it. They brought it to you. You might have to remind them, because some kids don't even know what day of the week it is. That was when things get washed, because otherwise you just end up with a mountain of washing that changes from day to day, and it's overwhelming. And that happened for my husband and I too. Our washing was done twice a week. When we had the baby's nappies and her clothes, they were just washed every day. A basic daily timetable. This is really important. Everybody needs timings, boundaries, a routine to follow during the day. If you have a routine, and you don't have to think it up or make it up every day, it just flows. If you've got the foundations set in, everything else gets built on that. So your child, they get up at a reasonable hour. You can choose what that is. Then you've got this period of time, and they are ready to sit down and start their bookwork at 9 o'clock. You're going to have to help them, especially the younger ones and those who get distracted, to kind of like keep to a timetable. Yeah, I do actually believe a child needs to make their bed and have a general tidy up every day. I kind of oscillated about this over the years between, well, it's their room, they should at least have some part of the house that they get to call their own and do what the heck they like. And then with, no, they still need to learn how to basically care for it. I've actually ended up now reflecting over the years, I'm with the latter actually. Yes, it is their room, that's their little private palace, but they still need to learn the discipline of this is just simply what we do every day. Psychologically, as the Fly Lady will teach you, there is something quite passively important about walking into your room and the bed is made. It is calming, it's tidy, and it just brings in the sense of calm and normality. I didn't used to do this in my earlier years of being a mum, but that very quickly became one of the non-negotiables. You get up and you make your bed every day. Meals during the week, just keep them basic. I quite like to experiment in the kitchen, and that was one of my mistakes in early homeschool years. So I would say leave the experimental and the involved cooking until the weekend. And where you can, cook extra and have some convenience food on hand for some of the days that just don't go right. It doesn't matter how much of a home-based original hippie you are, you're going to need a packet of pasta and a jar of pasta sauce that on those days you're just going to have to lean into your pantry, and that's what you pull out. Buy wisdom. Stay-at-home mum and homeschooling, it's your career. You have not left your career to take a break from it and just be a housewife or going to raise your children. No way, lady. So you invest in it accordingly. You find podcasts, you read books, you maybe attend online courses. It's like career enhancement or just a knowledge weekend or something like that. Apply the same way of thinking to being a stay-at-home mum and a homeschooling mum. Build into this. Take it really, really seriously. Buy wisdom. As a career for me, there was nothing else I could have done in this whole world that would have been as satisfying with the most long-term outcome, the most effect you are going to have on you and your child and the world that this child goes out into. There is nothing else out there as a career that compares to this. And once you start viewing what you are doing as a career, it changes the way you see things. So when you meet with other homeschooling mums to chat, and sometimes the dads, you're networking. Coffee in a cafe or having a homeschooling mum in to share with you a coffee and a piece of cake, you are in a business meeting, because inevitably you're talking about this kind of stuff anyway. You're just doing what you would do if you were in the office. So just change the way you think about that. Turn it into a business meeting. That gets rid of any guilt you might feel anyway, because who needs to feel guilt about sitting down and actually refreshing yourself over a coffee and a cake? But we do. So business meetings, ladies, they're a valid thing. The other thing you're going to have to bear in mind is you need to have start and stop times for yourself. When I referred earlier to the line gets very blurred between homeschooling and your other life, what I don't mean is that from the time your lovely feet hit the ground in the morning till the time you collapse in bed at night, you are working on this thing called your homeschool or household career. I don't mean that at all. You need to work into your day start and stop times and rest times for yourself too. Our forebears fought long and hard through their unions to work for the right to have morning and afternoon tea breaks, a set time for their lunch breaks, and 40-hour work week. So don't fall into the temptation that you've got to fill every working hour of your day with this career of yours. No, that's not wise. You're going to burn yourself out. You need to implement into your day break times. Know when you simply have to get on with something in the house. I'm talking like housework here, and not to include the child, even if they're really wanting to do it. Don't feel guilty when times come up and you just have to say, look, I'm really sorry, but I actually need to get on and do this with myself, but I'll have you come and do something with me a little bit later. There are times when you're going to have to do that. So just do it. You are the CEO. You get to make the executive decisions. You are not going to cause your child rejection syndrome that they're going to need counseling for in 15 years' time by telling them a few times that it isn't a good time right now to come and help me because mummy just needs to get on and do this, but I'll be with you soon. We use something called the interruption rule, and this was a really, really good idea. Kids are always in the moment, and they don't often see that you're talking with someone, another adult or another child, but especially with an adult. It is not appropriate for your children to learn that it's okay to interrupt you when you are talking or being with somebody else. Children need to learn that the world does not revolve around them, and other people apart from them are worthy of respect. So you're teaching them by doing this interruption rule. And what it is that I'm talking to a friend, blah, 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 sip, sip my cup of coffee. My child needs me. She comes up, she puts her hand on my shoulder or my arm or just wherever she can reach me. Immediately I know she needs me. I put my hand on her hand just to let her know I've heard you, even though there's been no words, I haven't looked at her. I'll be with you in just a moment. At the next opportune time in your chat with your friend, you just say, just excuse me a moment, and you turn to your child and then you give them the attention and you find out what it is that they need. So you're serving a few different purposes here. You're teaching your child respect, how not to interrupt people, how to interrupt people, and you're also showing the person that you are talking with and the child that each person is worthy of your time, but it's done in an orderly, respectful way. The interruption rule was really, really handy. The other thing you can do if you're not actually talking with somebody, but you just can't be interrupted. Okay, I'm a knitter. And if I'm halfway through counting something or reading a row and in comes my child and mom, rather than turn my attention straight up to them, you can just say, hold that thought, I'll be with you in just a moment. And you just finish off what it was that you're doing. The same principle comes into play here. You're teaching your child that in life they have to wait for the right time for something. Things have to be convenient for another person, and above all, it's respect and being aware outside themselves. Children are naturally selfish, inverted creatures, you know what I mean? Everybody knows that, and it's part of your job as a parent to make them aware outside of themselves and learn to be considerate. Make sure you do. Even if they've wandered off to do something, don't think, oh, they've forgotten. They haven't. If you've said you're going to go back and give them that time, make sure you do. The other thing that I would strongly suggest as part of your daily routine, no matter how old your children are, 1 p.m. in our house was rest time for everyone. We started reading our read aloud book at 11:30, 12 o'clock came and we had lunch. It was always a simple lunch and a playtime. 1 o'clock, that was sleep time for, the babies and the toddlers, and it was rest time for everybody else. If a preschooler has a little nap during that time, all the better. It's also your rest time. This is not your housework time. This is not, I'll quickly do this time. It is your rest time, because in the corporate world, you have a lunch break. They know that it's really, really important for you to take breaks, because without breaks, you don't do your best work when you go back to your afternoon or the rest of the time that you're actually working. So it's definitely an important thing. Again, you're getting this routine coming into the day. If you've got introverts in your family, this is their ideal time. They're just going to know that they're going to get a little bit of quiet space for themselves. For the extroverts in the family, they're learning that they too need to learn and know how to spend time by themselves. And if they're lying down reading their book, their heart rate goes down, their breathing rate goes down, they're actually being rested themselves. So even though the child gets beyond asleep, that was a non-negotiable issue in our house, and it was never ever questioned. It was just part of our daily routine and the way we did life. At 2 o'clock, everybody's up again. You can use a timer to wake yourself up if you like, if you think you're going to drop off. And that was the time and the signal for everybody to come out of their rooms and get into your afternoon activity. Now, Antonina asked me recently, what do you do with your toddler when you're working with your older children? Babies are a bit different because they're not moving, and they can have some tummy time or floor play while you are doing something with your older one. And they sleep more regularly. Now, once your baby is crawling, moving around, baby's on legs, another child could maybe play with them, knowing that their time is coming up with mum, when they just spend a little bit of time with the toddler, playing a game with them, doing a puzzle, playing with their teddies. A playpen is also really handy for times like these. It can keep the toddler safe, and you know that they're not going to get into anything while you need to spend a little bit of concentrated time with an older child. And in our household, it actually worked the other way around. Our eldest son used to get into the playpen with his Lego and blocks because his younger brother, when he was a toddler, did what toddlers do, and that was to break the blimmin' things down, build a tower and knock it down. So they're a good idea. Don't listen to that pop psychology that was going around a few years ago. Oh, they're like little prisons. All children should have total range of free plays and with no boundaries whatsoever. No, actually, learning boundaries is a life skill. It's not a prison. It's actually a safety thing. If you're going to stick your child in it all day, of course. Please don't misunderstand me here. You use them appropriately. You have your best interest in the child's well-being and outcome. So I know you're not going to misread this. Now, little ones can and do need to learn, as I've mentioned before, that they're part of a family, not the center. And a baby can learn this too. Little ones have really short attention span, so then they need kind of rapid turnover of things. So you might have to accommodate that in the time that you need to spend with an older child, and maybe wait till your baby or you're sleeping, and then you're going to get a little bit of time with that child. We also had, especially during our read aloud time, we called it the special box. The toddler at the time, who was obviously too young to begin to appreciate our book, their activity, and it was only theirs, and they could only have this box during this time, so the novelty factor of it was kept. And I think it was just like a shoebox with a lid, and I would keep in it activities and just little things that were special to him or her, a little car that was the only time that they could play with, maybe a little bit of like shoelaces going through a teddy that they would poke the holes through and do it all up. Little tiny activities like that were restricted to that time period. So so you can see why it became the special box. And an older child, that was hands off. That was not their box. It was for the toddler. And that worked really well for us. All right, lovely people, that is my question and answers for today. I would love to hear back some other questions you've got. I can't do question and answers unless you ask me the questions. So please do. I would love to hear them. Take care. Enjoy your children. Bye-bye for now.